We need a measure of it, a way to compare this awful toll. More Americans have died from COVID than soldiers in World War I, World War II, and Vietnam combined. 500,000 is more than the population of all but 37 cities in our country. The number of deaths last year was so large that our average life expectancy in the United States dropped by a full year. Yet the people impacted extends so much further. Each of these 500,000 people were sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, and friends. Their deaths leave a hole in the hearts of all the people they touched, stretching the casualties of this war into the millions. We look to our leaders in these times to find the right words to say, to provide comfort and healing to us, and to remind us that adversity makes us stronger. And all that is desperately needed, but we cannot and must not forget the lives that were cut short or those still recovering from this terrible illness. Eventually, this insidious virus will loosen its grips upon us, and the new normal that we're in will recede, and we'll do our best to rebuild. But while we do it, we can never forget the lives lost or those forever changed. And with that, I ask for a moment of silence for the victims of the coronavirus pandemic and a moment of thought for their families. Thank you. This virus has touched us in South Huntington many times. Unfortunately, and most recently, this past week, or in late January actually, when we lost a dedicated part-time security guard for our district for 18 years, Ms. Therese McCrae. So I ask you once again to have a moment of silence in honor of Ms. McCrae's life. Thank you. Okay. We are in February, and that means it is Black History Month, and we'll be having, the district will be having its Black History Month celebration virtually, albeit. But tonight, very quick snippet we have for you, and some congratulations are in order to Silas Wood 6th graders Abigail Kalou, Jack Tripoli, and Haley Wuss. They participated in the New York City Football Club and New York City Community Poetry Contest. These 6th grade writers created inspiring and powerful pieces that granted them finalist titles in the last round of the writing competition. Our Silas Wood finalists were invited to read their entries at New York City Football Club's virtual event in February, and Abigail Kalou was chosen as the contest winner. Congratulations to all, especially Abigail. I think we have a little bit of a piece to play for you.
Hi, this is Haley Wuss, and my poem, The Light Inside the Darkness. When a girl looks into the mirror, she sees a girl with some perfect breast relief. She sees a girl who swings into a world of darkness, not letting her go. Her friends and her family try to help her, but it never works. She's been laughed at and judged, and scarred by real life. This left her broken and beaten, more than anyone other. Time and time again, Emma screamed her name. But something stopped her. A voice inside her head tells her that this isn't the way. You think she might be, but no, it's true. A light, a bright light inside the darkness inside. Comfort realizes that she's pushing something. You know, the golden star, and it's proud. You think she's that you can touch me on the hand, but I don't have sitting anyway. That tiny light inside the darkness, now as bright as the sun. There are things you are wrong. And call. Have you been seeing what's been happening in the world? It's ridiculous that people judge other people by the color of their skin. And it's even more ridiculous that's been happening for a very long time now. If you're understandable, and compared to this, there's a canary walking around with light green colored skin. blending in with the forest. Then there was another spot where it's climbed the tree and now it's light brown. It's different colors, yes, but it's a different green though. No. So what you think is people who are respectful around it. Does that have different colors too? Yes. But is a different kind of person? No. Same thing with the community. We are all people no matter the black, white, or Hispanic. It does not matter. We are all human beings. Now some people might not agree, and if they don't, that's fine. But that is not right at all. So treat people how you want to be treated, and inequality has to go. Remember, we are all people no matter the color of their skin.
Hello, my name is Dr. Good, and this is my poem Someday. Someday we will all be able to be together in one room. Someday we will all be able to do social moves together. Someday the boundary between us will disappear for time. Someday the color of our skin won't matter, it will only bring us together. Must be not worried of the terrible things because we will have each other. Someday we will be able to have peace between each and every one of us. When that day arrives, let us be ready. We don't know who to sue, and many years from now. Because now, we do have conflict. We are chanting in the streets for equal rights. We are being exposed to violence and over things. But we can change. We can change together. Because together it is the way to make it better. We can stop the riots, the violence, and the sadness in this world. We can be amazing with the power that we hold. Instead of sadness, we can start love and joy. Instead of violence, think of peace. Instead of giving up on our hopes and dreams in this world, think of achieving them. Thinking will lead to action. So we all need a better mindset. A mindset that will change the way we act, speak, and move. Japanese thoughts have an effect on this world. The planet on which we live on, the only one we can live on. We can do this together. We're all in this together. We can stop the battles and fights to bring peace, hope, and joy to this very world. Lots of things are going on this planet. So let's help ourselves and one another so we can create a better world, a better time, a better time.
Thank you very much to our talented student. Thank you to our talented science. Each of you, especially Abigail Phillips. All right, and with that, one final announcement. Today, last year, Dr. Bernard and I were attending the Suffolk County Martin Luther King Commission annual luncheon, and we saw a great banner to celebrate Black history there, and it marked a lot of famous African Americans and really trailed Black history throughout the time. And I'd like to donate that to the district tonight, and to be able to have that displayed every Black History Month in the high school. So, Principal Murphy, enjoy.
Thank you so much.
And I think the theme of it kind of is that Black History Month is American history, and there's so many things that have happened by famous Black Americans that add so much richness and value to our country's history, and it's something to celebrate not just in February, but every month of the year. So with that said, we will get into our standard Board of Education budget overview. This is the time of the year in which we begin to craft our budget, and I'm going to turn it over to our current Assistant Superintendent for Business and District Operations, Dr. D'Elia, to present the overview of the 2021-2022 budget. Dr. D'Elia?
You're still on mute. What we do typically in the month, the end of February, is we have our budget overview. Tonight's overview is going to be rather quick, because like it is, it's just a basic overview. In the future budget development workshops that we have, we're gonna get a little bit more detailed and a little bit more granular into our codes, our highlights, and all the great things that are gonna happen for us next school year. But for tonight, like I said, this is gonna be kind of brief. So we're gonna review, if Thomas can go to the next slide. We're gonna review the current year, that's the majority of this presentation, and we'll take a little bit of a peek into next year. But beginning on March 10th, we're going to really start diving into some details and specifics. Next slide, Tom. Okay, basically school budgeting is like your home. It's basically you're trying to make sure your revenues at least match your expenditures. That's something I'm still working on in my home with my wife. But we want to make sure revenues and expenditures in a school district are rather similar. You know, we're a not-for-profit organization, but we definitely want to make sure that we can keep our expenditures and revenues in line. Next slide. Okay, as you can see, you know, property taxes make up the majority of our revenue for our school district. State aid, that absolutely helped us. We also have other revenues, such as rent and Medicaid reimbursements. And also, we are using our applied fund balance, which our operating budget this year, in our 2021 operating year, and using it, we're using a percentage of it for next year's operating budget, 21-22, and then also using some of our reserves that we have in the bank. And what we will focus on during this budget development is being less dependent on applied fund balance and reserves moving forward. Next slide. Okay, these are just some of your basic costs, and you know, obviously salaries take up the biggest piece of the pie graph. But in order to run a school district, there are many different costs and needs, and this usually stays very similar year to year. Next slide. Okay, these are the buildings that we run and operate. They really haven't changed from year to year. There could be some changes next year with some of the property sales that we have going forward. So, but as of now, for the 2021 school year, these are all the buildings that we support and fields. Next slide. You know, it's about what we do here in South Huntington. It's all about the people that, you know, young people that we educate. We have about 5,700 students. We were hovering around the 6,000, 5,900. It's gone down a little bit. And, you know, we have about 1,100 employees and that service our students here in South Huntington. Every single one of them is a very important key member of our success. Whether they're a teacher, custodian, paraprofessional, whatever they do, they all are part of the success of South Huntington. That's very important for everyone to know. Next slide. We have a very aggressive facilities committee, and this year we allocated $1.79 million in our transfer to capital, and we have some really wonderful work that has been completed and some that's still in progress. We have new boilers at Oakwood and Maplewood. We were able to get some interior doors at Memorial. The Walt Whitman Forum is unbelievable. I know because of COVID, we really haven't been able to showcase it too much, but at some point in the very near future, we hope to do that. But that place, it's unbelievable, the makeover that went on in the forum. And also the Stinson parking lot. Due to the weather, we've had a little hiccup with the delay due to the snow, but that project is still in line to be completed by the end of April and give us about 216 additional parking spots over at Stimson. So the project is moving along nicely. So we've done some great work, and we plan on doing some excellent work as well next year with our facilities. Next slide. Okay, this is just basically a fiscal overview of our budget from last year. You know, as I spoke earlier about the reserve usage, at 3.75 we used from our bank account, and then we also appropriated $5.1 million, and that made up the gap from the total revenue to the total expenditures. So something we're looking at also, as I mentioned, is to be less dependent on reserves and fund balance moving forward. Next slide. Dr. Semple.
Thank you, Dr. D'Elia. So obviously for a school district, its bread and butter is going to be its learning program. And we're proud to say our high school, Walt Whitman, as it has done every year, has expanded course offering opportunities for our students. To do so during a pandemic is extra noteworthy and quite frankly extraordinary. We were able to add courses this year in English and science. And these courses help to address the learning needs of all of our students. Obviously, technology was a major focus this year for us, considering the amount of remote learners, considering the students in a hybrid program. Basically, over the last 12 months, our technology program has grown by 2, 3, 4 times the size. We are now a one-to-one device district, pre-K through 12. That was completed earlier this fall. We recently have received several virtual dissection tables that we've discussed at previous board meetings that actually were first brought to district's attention by our Board of Education through attending their conferences. The newly renovated forum that Dr. D'Elia is so excited about, and rightfully so. 3 tables are currently housed there. We have one at our middle school, one of the only middle schools on the East Coast that have a virtual dissection table. Our staff are currently writing curriculum in our training. We've increased our bandwidth. We've increased our infrastructure to support this investment. And a lot of credit goes to our outstanding teaching and support staff who are really maximizing the utilization of this investment to the betterment of our students.
Next slide. Okay, one thing that we're working on, I mean, there's a number of things, but our academic K-12 recovery plan for the next school year, I want to be very clear that there's a lot going on this year within the schools, between the teachers, administration, working on doing the best we can to meet students' needs. What we're looking at next year, because this has some budgetary impact, we're looking at creating actually 2 committees, a K-5 committee and a 6-12 committee in the spring, which will be made up of teachers, administrators, in order to look at how to best utilize our resources and to come up with a very detailed plan, not just for the 21-22 school year, but for a 3-year period. And basically what I'm calling it is the unfinished learning that was interrupted through the pandemic last spring. Everybody's working hard. That's not, the question here. It's really putting our energies and efforts into a very detailed plan that will help our students make up any of that unfinished learning as we move forward. And we're going to be applying resources to this, and you're going to get more of an update as far as what we come up with in the spring that we will be presenting to the board as well. But my expectation is that it's going to be very detailed, and it's going to be prescriptive, and we're going to address these needs in great detail moving forward. Next slide. Again, just back to the budget is made up of 3 major parts. Our administrative part, which is basically comprised of our superintendent's office, business office, district clerk, purchasing, legal. Program is our big one. That really has regular ed, special ed, which incorporates salaries from those teachers, guidance, health, transportation. And capital is basically our operation and maintenance in our facilities, our debt services in there, many loans that we have to repay. So that makes up the 3 major parts of our operating budget. Next slide. Okay, we always, as I mentioned earlier, we want our revenues to exceed our expenditures, but in a lot of schools that doesn't happen too often. So one of the things we do is we look at the rainy day and we look to see if we can take some money out of savings, but at some point we have to look back and, stop putting money into savings. And that's a plan we're looking into. It's going to take a little bit of time because we're coming out of the pandemic, but fortunately, I think we're going to start that road this budget development year and moving us to be less dependent on those reserves and on fund balance. Next slide. Okay, foundation aid, that's the biggest piece of our overall state aid. And, you know, we are underfunded, but it's hard for us to really fight for a lot more money because you have 50 school districts on Long Island that actually receive less state aid than they did last year for this year and for next year. So that's a tough piece for us. So we're fortunate. And go to the next slide. You know, here's another aid category, our services aid, and actually the foundation aid stayed pretty flat from this year to next year. We did get an increase in our services aid, and this was a new aid that basically the governor combined a few more categories into this aid. And so this is where we did see a bit of an increase for us. Next slide. Okay, the state aid that we're projected to get is $39,510,899. That is, you know, 5.15% higher. So we feel very fortunate that we're one of the school districts that did receive more money. And a big piece of that came from our, as I talked about the services aid, our reimbursables, things that we purchased last year. We did receive some money on that, and that's one of the reasons why we did receive an increase, which we're very happy about. But we do want more. And we're going to fight for more. So that's what we feel we deserve. And, you know, our eyes are for South Huntington. I can't worry about the neighboring districts. We just have to worry about our people here in South Huntington, that we're getting the best and the most that we can for them.
Dr. Ilya, do we have any sense that the governor's budget is usually the floor, and usually the legislature kicks in a little bit more? Do we have any sense that'll happen this year, or do we think this is what we're going to get?
It seems like, you know, I know it's a very different year, but it's also not a different year in certain regards. So, you know, the usual sense is $300,000 to $500,000 more a year. I don't see why it would be different right now this year. We have to see what the exact stimulus package has earmarked for schools and specifically our district based on the formula that they're going to use. So I think we're waiting for that. That could be an impact. So I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that $2 to $3 or $4 million in addition is coming. But I'll speak for me personally that I'm expecting a little bit of something similar to what we've received in years past.
And have we gotten any stimulus money yet?
We did receive a piece of the CARES money. That was $810,000. From last year, we had 20% of it came in, and we're expecting the rest to come in this spring.
Okay.
But then there are a series of other rescue packages, state and national, mostly federal, that we're hoping that are much more robust.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, I guess, a $1.9 trillion package.
Yeah, something's got to trickle up, $6 trillion.
Okay. So we're expecting some money.
We're expecting something from that when the time comes.
And do we have any sense of whether that's like reimbursements based on expenses, or this is just gonna make it up?
Both.
Okay.
We're actually hearing that there'll be some type of reimbursable mechanism down the road, whatever that is, apart from in addition to FEMA.
Okay, and obviously we've tracked everything that we've spent this year due to COVID.
Yeah, because you got that locked down.
Okay.
Okay, as I stated earlier, the foundation aid basically stayed exactly the same from 2021 to 21-22. And as I mentioned, the services aid is that's where that 2.38 million is located. It's increased in that category in our services aid. And that's, like I said, based on the reimbursements. Next slide.
Yeah, it's important to note, as Dr. DeLee goes on, that's on money we spent and had coming to us. This increase is not the benevolence of the state. By the way, I don't mind the benevolence of the state if it comes next, in the next round. I don't mean that to say I'm not in the state or not, but everyone asked me how half the district got cuts and we got increases, and it's not because we're so loved. It's because we happen to have, Joe and Vito and April, probably better than any other assistant superintendent trio, know how to spend money in a way that it gets reimbursed. And that's really what it comes down to. So they really did a great job on this. Can you pull that off every year? No, but they were particularly sharp at it this year. But you can't do it every year. It's like a deduction. You can't get the same money, But it really did work well. So hopefully there is some benevolence coming and it's on top of this.
Okay, our pension system rates for next year, we do have the numbers, our ERS, Employee Retirement System, did go up a little over 1.5 points. And our TRS, Teacher Retirement System, our contributions did go up slightly. Healthcare does present a challenge for us because we those numbers come out based on the calendar year. We work from July 1st to June 30th, so we have to project and predict what the second half, or what from January to June, what those numbers will bring. So we always put a little bit of a cushion in our budget to make sure we can sustain any projected increase. And our utility costs are just basically similar, 3 to 4%. That's been the history over the last at least 10 years. Next slide. Okay, that takes us to our school district property sales. I remember speaking about these property sales in depth last budget development in the 1920 school year. We do have some updates. Our teen center, we do have an accepted offer by the board. We're about to go into contract. And also on Central Field, we do have an accepted offer. We're about to go into contract on those two properties. As far as 2 Melville, the old library, and Chichester, those properties are actively listed, and we're actively pursuing offers on those two properties. Next slide. And what we're looking to do with the proceeds from the sales, especially the two properties that we're projecting to put up on May 18th for the school budget vote, because it does require a community vote for us to actually sell any property in the district. We're looking to provide safety items, security, and infrastructure upgrades throughout our school district.
And just to build upon that point, each of these properties would be a separate proposition on the budget. And we don't yet know really, I don't think, how the voting is gonna work this year, whether it's gonna be traditional in person or mail ballots to every resident like last year. But in whatever form it takes place, each property sale would be a standalone proposition. So you would have a yes or no on the budget, and then a yes or no for each piece of property that would be for sale. So right now, as Dr. Lee said, we have 2 properties in contract, so we would have at least 3 propositions on the ballot. And there's a history for this. We've done it recently. A few years ago, we had the property that we purchased next to Stimson on the ballot. That passed thanks to the voters. That allowed us to do the Stimson parking lot, which is in construction. And then we also sold the property that year as well. That was the property that was near the old library, and that was turned into a house. So whenever the district wants to buy or sell properties, it's the board that enters into contract, but ultimately, we can't take that next step unless we get voter approval.
Okay, next slide. Ms. Gravilla.
Thank you, Dr. D'Elia. So to close tonight's first budget overview, the notable goals for 2021-22 are to continuously strive for excellence by addressing unfinished learning due to the pandemic and maintain fiscal sustainability. Next slide, please. Additional information about our budget journey for 21-22 will be covered on the following meeting dates. So our next meeting, work session for the budget will be on March 10th. Following that will be March 24th. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Any questions on the budget presentation? Of the board? Very good, thank you to all. Dr. Bernardo, I guess before we go forward, if you can give the district a little COVID kind of update, how it's impacting our district, any changes on the horizon?
Absolutely. COVID is in that unique time right now where vaccines are happening, numbers are going down, but at the same time, we can't lose our eye and our focus on the prize and safety. And, you know, I'm in a unique spot of, what I found with COVID is it's been very personal. So if you have someone that's been touched or moved, but you saw it, you know, you think we're in the midst of it, and if you don't, you think we're distance ourselves from it and everything's better. And the reality is somewhere in the middle. And so what we're trying to do, we you know, yesterday we had one, today we have a dozen. So it's one of the type of situations that you really can't predict, but our kids and our staff are being phenomenal with the I wouldn't say restrictions, but precautions. They seem to be cooperative in it. Our staff is really digging deep and, you know, and making sure kids are getting what they can. There is nothing like in-person instruction. You heard Dr. DeLeo a few moments ago mention a gap or unfinished learning. That's gonna be something that we're gonna be addressing largely, I think, in the months and year to come, but there's still a lot of quality. I observed a lesson today and a lesson yesterday, two good days in a row of just going into lessons and still seeing great things going on in the classrooms. 2 elementary lessons, which are some of the best I've seen in years. So there are still great things happening. I know this is getting long, I really do, and I know that between the ice and the snow and the cold and the mess and so, you know, I promised the community, I promised this board that we are looking at what can be done. I will tell you that I know you hear in the news that some schools are, everyone's going back, and in some schools, nobody's going back. We're trying to find a sweet spot in the middle. I think we did that pretty well with the elementary. And so now over the next several weeks, with the board's blessing, we want to reach out. We want to reach out to our board leadership, we want to reach out to our teacher and administrative and staff leadership, and we want to put some ideas together. What is and is not safe over the next several months in terms of who can and cannot come back, what activities can they have, what about prom, what about graduation? Those are all things that I promise we're working on, and we're not gonna walk away from things just because they're challenging to do. So I promise you we'll do that.
Well, that's standardized testing this year.
Interestingly enough, we don't think they're canceling the pre-grade testing, right, Joe? It
No,
looks like
it's on as
the
of now.
federal government and infinite wisdom are still going to test our 3rd through 8th graders, which is just remarkable, in terms of lack of foresight. And
And how does that work with, we've got people full, hybrid, remote?
no one's figured that out yet. And I don't mean to be evasive,
Yeah.
we all thought they were actually gonna do the reasonable thing and cancel the test.
Regions do, or?
Regents are up in the air, right, Joe?
Yep, yes.
Regents are up in the air. I see more of a chance of canceling regents than I frankly do with pre-grade testing, which is bizarre, that reversal, but we're not getting any feedback from the federal government at all. We are getting some feedback, while they're not like on other things from the state government. So, yeah, I mean, as soon as we know, we'll tell you, we're taking a swing at the plate, we are there lobbying and saying that we think this is ridiculous this year. Even if you're not worried about how kids do or how, even if you're not worried about that, just more instructional lost days to taking the test, especially in 3rd through 8th grade. Didn't seem to make much sense, but editorial side, we'll play the card for Dell.
And just the CDC guidelines that just came out, how does that play in?
So, you know, the federal government has an amazing way, a 55-page document, I was a little confused after I read it. And just to make sure I did it, Joe, you know, April, and we all looked at the same thing. They did a whole new series of color-coded zones, which, you know, we saw they abandoned the local zones at the state level, but they did a whole other series of color-coded zones. But the metric, and while my numbers are going down, the metrics they're using are really, are you in a community where numbers are low, high, medium, are you in a community where the numbers are going down, are you in a community where you have access to safety precautions, to PPE, to dividers and things like that. And their argument is from that, read this 55-page document, and really, there wasn't a definitive go ahead and come back, right, Joe, am I missing this? And there wasn't a definitive don't you dare. There was a, we'll let you local governments figure it out and local districts figure it out. So we're at that point. Our Suffolk County Board of Health is relatively cooperative, but they're also careful. So, you know, they're not being reckless with it. We are back with athletics, but they're under a lot of restrictions. When you think about our athletes wearing masks and being tested once a week, certainly the high-risk athletes, right? And, you know, you're not doing that with a 8th grade class. You know, if you can test 25 football players or gymnasts in the morning, it's a little bit different when you're testing 6,000 students, like nobody's doing that. So there are no apples to apples comparisons, is what I'm saying. You know, someone calls and says to me, how can you have soccer but not have, you know, women's soccer? And you call and and the state tells you that, well, they're going, everyone's in wind ensemble, and then, you know, you could debate, you could call the wind ensemble person back, and they could give you good reasons that soccer's ridiculous. That's what's happening now, everybody's starting to analyze each other. And what I was explaining to everyone is, us getting permission for you to do something doesn't mean the other guy took it from you or gave you, if that makes sense. We're trying to get people from doing apples comparisons, because nothing's like that right now. So the answer is, we read through that document, we are no better informed than when we started it, but the gist is, can you keep your infection rate down? Can you, when reasonable, do 6 feet? Can you make sure people are wearing masks? Do you have dividers? And we are checking a lot of those boxes. However, when you get to older kids, you know what happens, the bodies are bigger, you know, they change classes, and those are two big differences. So we're trying to do it smart, and we'll bring everything we have. We'll make some decisions as a team, like we always do. We board here with our different community leaderships and with our parents.
And do you have a sense, do you track, or are we not allowed to, what percentage of our staff has been vaccinated so far?
You know, we'll probably have a better number, later in the week. We actually just sent a new required state notice out today asking for who's been vaccinated. So I don't wanna hazard a guess. I mean, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago when I checked, between 30 and 50% of our staff had gone for their first shot. Believe me, with a large portion of the rest would go anytime we had. In other words, if I had this isn't them dragging their feet, this is the supply dragging their feet. If we had the vaccines here, you know, a large portion of our staff would be able to hang it out, we'd be glad to do that. So if anyone's listening out there from the Board of Health, we will give the shots here the day we get them. We'll learn to do it ourselves, it just doesn't happen yet.
Yeah, I think it's a supply issue.
I
They've
think it's a
got a lot of locations for my.
And people will do it.
Yeah, and everybody's willing to try, but those, I think that.
And what teachers been great, I check with Dennis regularly, and we try to reach out together and use our resources to kind of help each other's teams out. You know, what teachers can we get in there, what administrators can we get in there, we're trying.
And we appreciate, obviously, this is, when something drags on this long, it's easy to get tired of it, but
Mission grade.
you keep on top of the COVID, of the daily reports and the transparency. I think it's appreciated by all.
Thanks. Well, this board's been very patient with it, and it's made it a lot different than it is in districts where not only are they fighting the virus, but they're fighting each other. Appreciate it.
Any other questions on that? Good. Okay, we'll move into our business agenda then. Thank you, Dr. Bernard, thank you, Dr. Leah, Dr. Semmore, and Mr. Pillow. All right, motion to adopt the agenda. Ms. Carey, second by Mr. Nickwitz. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Items C through F, minutes, financial items, and bills require one resolution for adoption. Is there a motion? Mr. Bronson, and second by Ms. DiGatano. Any questions on items C through F? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to communications, we have a few communications today. We have an invitation from our own trustee, Mr. Sidney Joyner. And I got he is a member of Eta Theta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. I got that right? And
that is correct.
it was a mouthful. And Mr. Joyner is a member, and he's also the chair of this year's annual event, and they're having their upcoming Martin Luther King celebration on February 27th at 12 p.m. And he extends the invitation. Anything else you'd like to share with us, Mr. Joyner, on that?
Just to give you a little background on the organization, you might have known that Kamala Harris belongs to Alpha sorority. That's our sister organization. So we're talking about the organization is a historical black fraternity that's actually the first one that existed in from 1906. And so the organization is firmly centered on the work of education, community service, and other ideals that revolve around mentoring young African men of color and making sure that they get to be the best that they can be in education and careers. You might know some of the luminary members who've been a part of this: Paul Robeson, Thurgood Marshall, W.E.B. Du Bois. It is absolutely one of the high points of my life to be a part of this organization. And I have reached a milestone in my short tenure as a member by being awarded the chairmanship for this, their 36th annual event, because it's the first time they've ever let somebody who's been a member, which they would call a new person, to be able to lead this effort. So it has been a monumental honor for me, and I appreciate the support of the board, because the work that they do, I'll just share a little bit about. They have a college tour which is going on their 39th year, where they take kids from across the country, actually, to about 7 or 8 different historically Black colleges. And over the years, they've helped about 3,600 kids get to college, become successful through that tour. That's just one of the initiatives that they have. So the funding from this program that they have in MLK event, a good portion of those funds goes to putting on events like that and other food drives and a host of other things that they do. So in order for brevity, I will not expound but so much further, but again, it is a privilege, and I really thank you for the support that you provided to me and everybody who's not got a problem, but to just support. So thank you again, and thank you for mentioning this.
Thank you, Mr. Joyner. And is there a keynote speaker, or what's the program like?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes, the keynote speaker is Brother Basil Schmeichel. He also happens to be a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. He is an MSNBC contributor. He's also he's a political strategist who worked with David Dinkins, former Governor David Patterson, and now he's running the campaign. He's a campaign manager for Ray McGuire, who's running for mayor.
Excellent. And congratulations, Mr. Joyner, on the honor of chairing that. We're very proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, moving on to communication number 2, we have a letter from, this is gonna be a tough one. Wait, yeah, you wanna do it?
Yeah, just, Western Suffolk BOCES reached out to us. Thank you, Mr. Shredder, for letting me do this. This one's kind of exciting. Western Suffolk BOCES reached out to us on 2 individuals. Western Suffolk BOCES is our mothership of all things academic. And they're also apparently pretty good judges of talent, because we got word from Western Suffolk BOCES that with the numerous hundreds of candidates, they had chosen Dr. Senimore as their Administrator of the Year. People who know Joe Senimore know that he gives 24/7. That's what he does. Joe is a server, he's a saver, he's a taking care of her. That's what he does for people. And the teachers that nominated Joe, because he came from teachers, the teachers that nominated Joe said that they just feel like they're protected and they're getting better when they're around Joe Senimore. Those are 2 pretty special things. Sounds kind of like what Dad does. So thank you, Joe, from all of us. Thank you for being a pretty good dad to a lot of people around here. And congratulations on this wonderful honor. So that's the first great news. But man, we're on a roll, because the Library Science Committee picked the librarian of the year from all the districts in Western Suffolk BOCES. And we were really excited when our very own Susan Teeter was selected as that individual. Susan is a person who brings library to life. If this was 30 years ago, I'd say she brings books to life, but God forbid you say only books in a library now, and someone will tell you it's much more than that. It's a media center. So we thank Susan for making media centers alive. We thank her for making them engaging, and we thank her for making them accessible. Her belief in equity, her belief in a rising tide lifting all boats, kind of makes me smile every time I think of her. So congratulations, Susan. Thank you to Western Suffolk BOCES who have a great eye for talent. They should be the general managers for the Jets. It would help a lot. But to our 2 superstars, Joe, Susan, we love you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pleasure. And we have a 4th correspondence. This is also from Western Suffolk BOCES. They're informing us that their annual meeting is on April 13th, and the vote for Western Suffolk BOCES is on April 27th. They have 2 vacancies on their Board of Education, and our own former Mr. Cate is seeking re-election, and then they have a 2nd vacancy due to a resignation, and they're requesting nominations. Good. On to new business. New business item number 1 is a budget transfer approval. Motion to discuss. Ms. Carey, seconded by Mr. Bronson. Dr. D'Elia?
Yes, this is due to post June 30th teacher retirements, their terminal leave. We've had numerous retirements, we've had some enhancement packages put out after June 30th, and this also is in regard to our 14 teachers that will, as of now, that will be retiring at the end of this school year, will require some terminal leave payments, and that's why we're recommending this budget transfer.
And this needs to be over a certain amount, the board has to approve budget transfers, correct?
Correct, it's over 250,000, so
250,
it requires board approval.
Okay. And this budget account that it's going to, that's the terminal leave account, or
Yes,
questions? All in favor of the transfer? Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business, item number 2, renewal of a lease. Motion to discuss. Ms. Carey, seconded by Ms. DiGatano. This is a renewal of our Mount Golda lease. This is for the leasing of a parking area in front of Huntington Primary Center. The property actually belongs to the Mount Golda Cemetery Association. We have been leasing this for a number of years now, going back to June 2006. And this resolution would authorize a second lease renewal for a new 5-year term. Does the board have any questions? Yes, Ms. Barnes.
Where's the relation to Countrywood? Is it across the street where the cemetery is? Is it that actual, like, part of our parking lot that's built in the land?
Yeah, it's actually in the parking lot area that's like closest to the roadway, so it's across the street from the cemetery, yeah.
Really? Okay.
It was interesting. I think we found out a number of years ago, back in 2006, that it wasn't actually our property. Bless you. We thought it was our property, so we found out that it was the cemetery, which was unusual, kind of odd that the cemetery would own the property across the street.
Yeah,
And never tell us.
Yeah,
okay.
so,
So we put the parking lot on it.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, pull it over.
yeah, that was, that, yeah. So we leased it for a nominal amount, I think it's $200. How much is the lease for, Dr. Zillia? $200?
3,000 a year,
How much? I'm sorry.
3,000 a year comes out to 250 a month.
Okay. Any questions? That'd be a neat thing. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, item number 3 is a request to remain in South Huntington. Motion discussed. Ms. Carey, seconded by Ms. Bronson and Mr. Joyner. This was a request to remain as a virtual student this is a 5th grade student currently attending virtual intermediate, as well as a 11th grade student, actually 2 requests. And they are requesting to remain in South Huntington, and we discussed these in the executive session. We would make amendment.
Yes.
Yep, and that would be that the approval is for the balance of the 2021-2022 school year. So it's really, I don't know if we need to amend the resolution, more of a clarification that that's what we should be talking about. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, sorry. Thank you, for the, some surprising for the balance of the 2020-2021 school year. That would be the request to remain. Any further questions on this? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Ms. Burpillo, when you send them the letter notifying them, please make sure that condition is in there.
Absolutely.
Thank you to the board for being flexibility on this too. It's a nice touch, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item is a vehicle lease agreement, motion to discuss. Mr. Nicollet, seconded by Ms. DiGatano and Mr. Bronson. Dr. D'Elia?
Yes, this was in regard to bringing back our elementary students full-time. Due to some social distancing, we had a need for 2 additional large buses, and we are leasing them from our friends over at Educational Bus. And they're also giving us 2 vans, I may note that they're not charging us for.
Nice. Okay. Good. Questions? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, the lease is approved. Next item of new business is a conference attendance approval for board trustee. Motion to discuss. Ms. Nichols, seconded by Ms. Carey and Ms. Vigatano. This is for the National School Board Association Annual Conference this year. Unfortunately, it's virtual, and it's for one board member, Mr. Joyner, to attend. Any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, very good.
So we were approving Cindy to attend the conference from home.
Yes, virtually, yeah.
You have to approve that?
Yes,
Copy of
yeah.
the registration fee out of that.
Oh, for the fee.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. There's a registration.
I'm a little punchy tonight.
That's okay. So, Mr. Joyner, please report back to us on what you learned.
I certainly will bring back a full, robust report for everyone.
Thank you. Okay, item number 6 is a approval of contract extension for transportation. Motion to discuss. Mr. Bronson, seconded by Mr. Nichols and Ms. Carey. Dr. DeLeo.
Yes, this is very happy to report. We have a 1-year contract extension with Educational Bus. And basically the agreement is based on our current number plus CPI, which is determined by the state in the month of May. And, you know, in overseeing transportation, I can say Educational has been a great fit and a great partner for South Huntington. And, you know, they basically this year, with transportation, we're running 2 sets of routes, especially when we started everybody with hybrid. This has definitely been the most challenging, difficult year, and they've been amazing, as what they've been able to provide us in South Huntington. So we're, from my perspective, it seems like Educational has done a great job, and I'm very happy that, you know, recommending to the board that we can potentially secure them for another year, and then some, hopefully.
They've been outstanding.
Board, have any questions? We don't have to go out to bid on this?
No, because it is, a 1-year based on CPI.
Okay.
Transportation has a special caveat, because of the unique nature of planning with transportation, they allow the, mutually agreed CPI renewal.
Okay.
It's unique in education law.
Any other questions? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Board resolution, we spent $8.5 million.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It's kind of overwhelming. Okay, item number 7 is recommendations for placements of the students by the Committee on Special Education, dates listed December, January, February, and Committee on Preschool Education, dates listed August, January, and February. Motion discussed. Mr. Bronson, seconded by Mr. Nichols. Any questions on the placements? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Personnel reports are, personnel schedules listed, 7, 9, 11, 15, 16, 17, 19, and 22. Motion to discuss. Ms. Carey, seconded by Ms. Bronson. Any questions on these schedules? All in favor? Information and reports are listed. I call your attention to item number M1, which is a Newsday article on a very exciting development and recognition for one of our students who graduated, Summer Levinsky. She has been named the first and only female in Suffolk County to earn the rank of Eagle Scout. So, trailblazer, making history, and we're glad that South Huntington is making that history, and it comes appropriately as we get ready to enter Women's History Month. Congratulations to Summer. Information and reports are listed. Facilities Committee reports. The Facilities Committee met on February 16th. It was a rather short meeting for the Facilities Committee. We discussed updated real estate, which we talked about during our budget overview, as well as ongoing capital works projects, Simpson parking lot. Then we started to get into talking about what to do with any proceeds of the sales of properties. We'll talk about this some more, but it was the committee's recommendation on the first $1 million to spend that on the entryways and the vestibules, to secure the vestibules at each of the elementary schools and all of our schools actually. So we'll talk more about that, but that was something out of the bonds, the safety piece of the bond. So that would be the committee's first recommendation on any sales, but we'll see what else we can sell and come to you with more recommendations. And that was about all. Questions on facilities? The rest of the minutes are there, if you have any questions, please let me know. Future meetings are listed: March 10th, March 24th, April 20th, April 27th, May 11th, and then the budget vote and board of election on May 18th, yet to be determined how that will be conducted. Comments by board members? Yes, Mr. Bronson?
Just get to, number one, congratulate Dr. Senor again, Ms. Peter, and Ms. Levinsky for all their wonderful achievements. And second, while we don't have an official policy meeting yet, there will be a new policy that will be implementing the state requiring that single-sex bathrooms in the schools be designated as gender neutral. That's the policy that we will follow our procedure.
Oh, wow.
It's something that's going to be on the agenda.
Okay. Good. Any other comments? Voice of the residents, if any, Mr. Ciarella?
No, not at this time.
Okay, no one at this time? Okay. With that said, I will take a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters of personnel and real estate, specifically district properties and staffing. Motion. Ms. Carey, second by Ms. Nicholas. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you all. Good evening and be well.